What's up, y'all? I'm back. Quadash, Adonai, Elohim, Sabayah, meaning holy, 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 Lord of hosts. Yah, He, Vah, those four syllables create the tetragrammaton. Those four syllables signify divine masculine and divine feminine. The first Yah signifies the Father who art in heaven, Abba, the architect of the universe. He deals with divine feminine, the mother, 360 degrees, the earth, where mankind was created, molded, shaped, and formed in the womb. Divine feminine, mother nature. The next Ba signifies us, the creation, because in the beginning Elohim said, let us create them in our image. Keywords in that passage, what this topic is going to be more so focused on today, is the us and the our. Genesis, meaning in the beginning, or in Hebrew, meaning Bereshith, and the last Hey signifies Anna, which is the opposite of Abba, Chokmah. Chokmah is one of the 10 Sephirats of the tree of life that signifies wisdom. That's another key thing we're going to talk about today. So Anna, Chokmah, mother wisdom, because wisdom is connected to everything that is, was, and will be, which deals with Akasha. Akasha is crystalline energy of everything that is, was, and will be, that can't be erased because it's in memories, DNA memories, and it's wisdom, it's you live and you learn from trial and error. You got to go through some things to know some things, but everybody has a piece of the puzzle, so the spirit, it lives, it's there. So, all the answers we seek are not outside of ourselves, but eternally within. And we all have a piece of the puzzle, but we all have to work together as a collective consciousness and a collective whole, to get back to where we started before we were divided and conquered and separated and brought under this confusion and separation, Remember, the languages were separated. But as above, so below. As within, so without. The macro prosophis above and the micro prosophis below, because we are the microorganisms and the hosts of the Elohim. Psalms 82. Ye are all gods and children of the Most High. As it also says, the Most High judgeth in the congregation of the gods. Ye are all gods and children of the Most High, but you will all still die like mere men. Now let's get into it. Now today we're going to talk about the biblical creation story versus the epic of creation, the Sumerian creation story that talks about Enki and Enlil. So I'm going to touch on a couple things today, and we're going to read here, and we're going to get to the bottom of some things. So first off, I want to start by give y'all a breakdown of Enki and Enlil, so you understand who these two characters are and what role that they play before we go into the biblical verses, so help you understand and comprehend better what is going on here, because that us and that are, we got to get to it. Nobody really breaks it down or stresses it enough as much as I do, so I'm gonna get to it. It's been put on my spirit to do so, so I'm going to do so. Enki and Enlil are two of the most important gods in Mesopotamian mythology, but they represent very different roles and powers and personalities. 1. Major myth: Enuma Elish, Atra Hatis, Eridu Genesis, and various Sumerian tales. Enlil, the sovereign authority in cosmic order, Title, Lord of the Air, Wind, and Command. His role is kingship, decree, order, and executive authority. His personality, strict, commanding, sometimes harsh. Domain, ruling the universe, enforcing decrees of destiny. Enlil is the ruler and head of the divine assembly. Notes, he issues decisions that other gods must follow. Enki. Now this is the opposite. This is the other one. We just went through Enlil. Enki, the wise one, trickster and benefactor. Our title, Lord of the Earth, Fresh Waters, and Apsu. Role, creation, magic, wisdom, problem solving. Now look at the key things I just said in there. Wisdom. And remember in the beginning, it says Enki is wise one, trickster and benefactor. Role, creation, magic, wisdom, problem solving. Alright, personalities, clever, compassionate, strategic. Domain, water, fertility, knowledge, sorcery, and technology, So right here in the Supreme Mathematic book, it tells you about technology. Technology means to be an engineer. An engineer means to be a builder. So to be a builder, you follow these patterns in nature or in numbers and synchronicities and measurements. You become a builder, which they call in African culture Heka. Heka is where you get the word magic from. Sorcery stems from a lot of things. It goes from the Greek word pharmakia, where you get your English word pharmacy from, where you will see the medical symbol of two snakes around the pole. But those two snakes around the pole, in some cultures they get a negative incantation because it deals with it says it deals with medicine, because really sorcery is altering one's perception from a natural state to a diluted or a perverted state to where as though it is unnatural. Kind of like, putting chloride in your water, or putting GMOs in your food, or giving you synthetic ingredients and making you think it's the real thing. Next time you get some vanilla extract, look at it and see if it says bioengineered on it. That's a form of sorcery, trickster. But the universal law says that you have to be warned, because there's a thing of deception, whereas though but this deception is legal in their eyes, but long as they put it in a warning label, like, all right, these cigarettes may cause you cancer, but under your free will, it's up to you to decide if you still want to buy it, And the Most High always said, my people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge. So the lack of knowledge means being unaware, and be aware is to be alive, be conscious in existence, mindful and aware of everything that is happening around you, because otherwise you're just deaf, dumb, and blind. You're going through this thing called life, but covered in a veil, you're distracted, we all get distracted by something. It could be social media, it could be anything that draws our attention elsewhere, and allows us not to be steadily focused on the main things at hand or that are important in our livelihood, So back to this, domains, waters, fertility, knowledge, sorcery, technology. I want to try to keep this short because I'm about to expand my horizons and start posting on TikTok today instead of just YouTube. So, and those that see this on TikTok, you can also go to my YouTube channel, which is New Jeru Blue, which is NEW space JERRU space BLEU. And that's my channel over there. But, this is going to be my first video on TikTok that I'm going to post. I'm going to create a series of videos. As you can see, I got my work cut out for me. I'm very busy, all around the board. And it's time. It's that time, I've been in hibernation, cut back on smoking, trying to go back natural. You see, I'm down to a half a patch now. It's been a week. First week was whole patch to half a patch. You see, I'm chewing on licorice sticks and other stuff, I've been on and off the smoking thing, went from cigarettes, from cigars to vapes. It's that times, none of that stuff is benefit my body. Once your intuition, your intuitive nature, that third eye, pineal, third eye means abilities beyond the physical realm. So the abilities beyond this physical realm, your intuitive nature, it speaks to you by way of signaling your body, or it could be causing you discomfort. That discomfort is where you get the word disease from. It's letting you know when something isn't right or when you need to pull back from something. So you have to listen to that, these spirits, spirits. But back to this. Like I said, Enki, the wise one, trickster and benefactor. Title, Lord of the Earth, Fresh Waters, Absu, role, creation, magic, wisdom, problem solving, personality, clever, compassionate, strategic, domain, waters, fertility, knowledge, sorcery, and technology. Like I was just breaking down technology. Enki is the god who understands, creates, and protects humanity. Now, look at this distinction here. Now, 2, their role in creation. Enlil doesn't create humans, creates the separation of heaven and earth. In some traditions, gives structure to the cosmos by issuing decrees of destiny. He is the cosmic administrator. This is Enlil. Now, Enki creates humanity, especially in the Atrahasis myth. Uses clay and divine blood to form humans. Sounds familiar, don't it? Teaches human civilization, crafts, irrigation, agriculture, right in. He is the engineer and culture hero. Okay? Now 3, it says their attitude towards humanity. This is key that you know these things. Their attitude towards humanity. Enlil often hostile towards human. In the Atrahasis, Enlil thinks humans are too noisy and disruptive. Sends disasters to control or wipe out humanity. Plague, famine, drought, the flood. Note, he wants order and silence. Remember that saying, I am a jealous God? Well, we're gonna break all that down today. All right. Enki, the protector of humanity. Now this is the other brother. Enki, the protector of humanity. I'm gonna show y'all all the similarities and parallels that coincide, together. Because coincide, that means that none of this is a coincidence. Alright? Enki, protector of humanity. Enki repeatedly sabotages Enlil's plans. 1. Sends medicine to stop the plague. Remember, sends medicine to stop the plague. Remember that he's connected to sorcery. Sorcery deals with altering. That can go both ways, Medicine, 2 snakes around the pole, but it also represents the Kundalini, and it also represents the DNA in the body, which also deals with eternal essence, And I could break down the whole thing with Ningazita as well too. I'm getting this down packed because that was my job. Being as a Virgo, I'm considered also as a healer. I was born on a Wednesday, so that means I don't just correlate with the Virgo as a communicator. Boom, being born on a Wednesday, you become a great communicator and a great healer, And not only am I born on all 9 alignments, 9th month, the 19th day of the 1990 with the 90th year at exactly 8:59 p.m., that puts my guardian angel mid-Adele at number 36 on the chart. What's the odds of that? Y'all think that's a coincidence? No, sir, wait. And I realized I was not subject to just study one religion. I done been through all these different religions and concepts and beliefs over time, but I realized I am an infinite being. I am connected to the all. Like I say in my affirmation, I am in the love of all, and all love is in me. I am a part of all, and all is a part of me. I am one with all, and all is one with me. I can succeed as a part of all, and failure is individual. I can be all that I wish in all, as long as my wish is sustained within all. I am never alone. I am means higher, short, higher. I am never alone. All is, I am. All can, I can. All does, I do. So if you'll see different concepts from African religion, a little bit about, witchery, wizardry, wise art, voodoo, law of attraction, all the esoteric books of the Apocalypse of Abraham, moon spells. All that's doing is going into the phases. None of this stuff is magic outside of you. It's all within you, but it's you just aligning yourself like a phone to Bluetooth and connecting to a signal, so y'all can become one in synchronicity. It's the same thing as the human body. You connect with the patterns of nature, Mother Nature, the nurturer, the mother, that prepares you, and gets you ready for the world, nurtures you, gives you the things you need, but you also got to know how to read the program. You see, I have Egyptian cards here. Remember, the Israelites didn't become a nation until they went to Egypt. It comes from the Greek word Egyptos, which would originally be Mitzrayim, because it was one of the sons of Ham, which you will learn in the Zondervan Compact Dictionary, will tell you that Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, and Japheth, the Isles or the Gentiles, where Ashkenaz come from, or the Sephardic Jews, means the separate Jews, or the converted Jews that are in that land, that come from Ashkenaz, are the sons of Gomer. So when people start telling you all this, this is who, this and that don't matter, it does matter. It all matters. Color does matter, not to get into the race debate, but it plays a part because there's clear distinctions of the why and what, And then it tells you the Negroes. It even tells you where the word nigger comes from. Nigger means black. Negro or in Spanish means black, but actually in Hebrew, all the Hebrew translations, I'll show you right here. But we're going to get back to where we were starting at. But right here. Right, you can see right there. What does it say? Hold on. Yeah, right there where I got that pointed out at. What do you see? This is in Hebrew. Now, if you go into the books of Acts, it tells you that the Messiah, they called them nigger. Why did they call them nigger? Because it made a clear distinction of their color. Because you got the Romans, which would be the modern day Italians, that they were under their rule, And as you can see here, I guess this video is going to be long. But it tells you right here in Acts. Is it Acts? What's it, Acts? Yeah, you gotta read this. It says Acts 13. And it said, among the prophets and the teachers, the church in Antioch in of Syria and Barnabas, Simon called the nigger. And it translated in here, it says the black man. So it tells you right here exactly who they were talking about. Just like the Zondervan Compact Dictionary tells you exactly which lineage that the Negro comes from, the Shem. And we're going to get into all of that. It tells you that. It tells you where the Ham went, from Cush, Sudan, and the Egypt. But remember that the Israelites did not become a nation until they went into the land of Egypt. So we might have to do a two-part series on this, but this video is probably going to be a little bit over, but it's going to be a lot of meat and bones in here. But back to this. It says that Enki, the protector of humanity, Enki repeatedly sabotages Enlil's plans, sends Metatron to stop the plague, teaches humans how to survive famines. 3, warns Atrahasis Unapistim of the coming of the flood in secret, because guess what? There was a decree made that humanity was going to get wiped out, and these Annunaki, or you could say Babylonian, Sumerian, Akkadian because guess what? This is the same. That's the same land, but it was the name was changed multiple times. So remember, languages got confused. But we're gonna talk about that in this lecture right here. So pay close attention. Make sure you get your pencils and papers and write this stuff down, because it's very vital that you know this stuff in this time right now. I'm going to also do videos on Three Eye Atlas, the red and the blue Kachina, Wormwood, and how is it all significant to the New Jerusalem that's coming outside, down to the diameters and measurements of it, the crystals that correlate with it, and how these crystals correlated with, in Sumerian, Babylonian times, how people tell you that these crystals don't have no validity, but all the breastplates of Aaron, they all had crystals. So let these preachers and pastors lie to you. Remember, they under 501c3, to get government funding and so much other stuff. So it's only so many things that they're going to talk about. So look at this. It says, Enki saves humanity behind Enlil's back. It says, for the Rose in the flood story, Enlil decides to send the flood, tries to exterminate humanity completely, becomes angry that someone survived. Sounds like a jealous god to me, right there. But we're going to break that down. It says, Enki, now, that was Enlil, Enki's oath bound not to tell of the flood. He was oath bound not to tell of the flood, but this is what he did. He says, so he speaks through a reed wall to warn the flood hero. So it's basically like some telepathic communication that they were using their technology. And it shows you how they were able to do this in Tablets of Destiny and all this. So remember, these Anunnaki, they're considered gods, but there's a most high God above them, spirit. We're going to get into a creation story of heaven and earth and the waters and the deep, because that's key too, because there was a war in heaven before creation, and it breaks down, the planetary war when Marduk and Tiamat came, and then how the splitting off of the earth, and then how the astral belt, the Van Allen belt, whatever you want to call it, was created, the firmament, the waters of separation, and then how they have these many satellites from Kingu, of Tiamat, and then how that became our moon, and why the moon looks like a rock, and it even goes on to even more to break down why you see a face on Mars, because that's deep too, and that breaks down where those 200 fallen ones came from. But that's a whole nother video. I could keep going and going and going. Well, I'm deep in there. Now, y'all got y'all real teachers back, They keep putting all the other good, great teachers in jail. They keep trying to put us in prison house. Well, my guardian angel, his duty is to break people out of prison, But guess what? The more that they keep ramping this up, the judgment is going to come, because everyone that they take out, the other one's going to have to come back sharp. That means these next ones, they're going to have to know every law. They're going to have to know how the system works inside out. They got to know the pattern. They got to watch who they keep around them. They got to know how these wicked ones' tactics is working, because they're using the same strategic strategies to take us all out, From physical assassinations to mental assassinations or defamations of character, It's nothing new under the sun, Their tactics are the same. They always use divide and conquer. They'll use a weakness, use somebody close to you. It could be a baby mom, girlfriend, ex, friend, somebody. They always have to use an infiltrator. Just even with Malcolm X, when he was giving a speech, they cause a distraction. Get your hand out my pocket. We got thief in here. Everybody's supposed to pay attention over there. Boom, bang, gunmen's come in. Boom, easy going for the kill. And they use your own people to do it. But nothing new under the sun, because the judgment is going to ramp up, because this explains this ideology of who these people are. So, Enki oath bound not to tell of the flood, so he speaks through a reed wall to warn the flood hero. Gives precise instructions to build a boat and help reestablish humanity after the flood. You hear that? After the flood. All right. Now it says their roles in divine council. Remember the divine council. Remember there's a federation. Some people say in the book of Revelation, it talks about the 24 elders that sit upon the throne. And Psalms, 82, it says the Most High, the Most High. This is where you get Anu. Anu is the Most High. Elion El. Remember, it was Elion El before Yahweh even came into the picture, you know. It was just syllables. Sacred name. You can't even utter the real name of the Most High because it's so powerful. But, you know, Anu means the Most High. Sky, God, heaven. But you got God of earth as well, you know. So remember, 5. Their role in divine council. Enlil, king of the gods, especially in early Sumer and Akkad, Akkadi, you know, presided over the council's issues, binding decrees. So, just like when the war in heaven, you know, it tells you about how the planets was even casting their spells and all these other things. That's how they had incantation wars, or what you would call tribunals, or this is how they would think. They would settle their disputes. They would go in these circles, but they basically using the magic, the magneticism, you know, the magnet, the things that you gravitate to yourself, you know, to make things happen. So it was more so mental wars, or, you know, these abilities, using elemental forces instead of it even being physical. Some of the situation was physical, but this is where all magic stems from. So it says, council. Enlil, king of the gods, especially in early Sumer and Akkad, presided over the councils, issuing binding decrees. Enki, on the other hand, serves as a wise counselor, often counters or softens Enlil's commands with clever solutions. 6. Their symbolism. Enlil, air, wind, and command, authority and kingship, social order, and divine law. Now, Enki, on the other hand, water, fresh water, springs, and Abzu, creation and fertility, magic, wisdom, and craftsmanship. Alright. 7. Behavior towards other gods. Enlil, high-strung, authoritative, expects obedience, can banish or punish other gods. Now, Enki, on the other hand, peaceful, playful, sometimes trickster, likes help other gods negotiate disputes, known for seduction, myths, and cleverness, and distributing me powers of civilization. So, all right, you see that now. That's just a brief summary of the creation story of gods. So now let's look at this. Now, the biblical versions of God being plural. Now we have Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image." So in this passage here, you have these key words that make a distinction of making meaning. So we'll say the English word will say God, but Hebrew will say Elohim. Elohim is plural, so it means more than one. It says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image." So now, this other passage, Genesis 3 and 22. These are key things that you got to pay attention to when you're reading these passages. Genesis 3 and 22. Then the Lord said, "Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil." I don't know why it's so hard to believe in the church that us knowing good and evil was such a bad thing, but I'm going to tell you some distinctions between that. Now look, now 3, Genesis 11 and 7. "Come, let us go down and confuse their language." Now look at these passages. It says, "Come." This is Genesis 11 and 7. It says, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language." Who's this us? If it's only talking about one entity here, where's the confusion and the separation here? So 4, it says, well, this is the fourth passage I'm going to give you. It says, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? God's throne room. This is being said in the throne room. Now Isaiah 6:8, it says, and I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Who will go for us? Who's us? So this is telling you, this is the congregation of God. This is the divine council here of a multitude of gods. Some people say angels are gods because they're called B'nai Elohim. B'nai means sons. Elohim means gods, plural. El, that's why you see most of the angels' names end in El. Michael, Uriel, Gabriel, Cassie, Hannah, Menadel. That's just one part of. That's why you see in Hebrew it says 72 names of God. In Islam it'll say it's 99 names of God and these attributes, because God is a collective whole force. Just like the people, set apart people, are the most supposed to be a collective whole, collective consciousness, which you would call cosmic consciousness, which is newly being called Christ consciousness, that most people don't even realize that's what they're saying, but that's exactly what it is. So what do they say? Devil. Devil would be, low vibrational entity. Devil is not this fiery person with some horns sitting in the bottom of some burning plate. The devil is burning within inside of you. We are created in duality beings, so we have good and evil. What does it say in the Bible? It said, I am a God, I make peace and I make war, good and evil. But you're still thinking this is one entity here. But we're going to talk about the collective Lord of hosts. Hosts are vessels, multiple vessels. So, Elohim in Hebrew means gods. In Egypt, they would be called the Neteru. Biblical Aramaic, Elohah. Later in Syriac, Allah, God. In Arabic, it would be called Ilah, or God, deity Allah. Is the same, comes from the same Semitic root family. Yahweh, Elohim, El, Allah, E-L-A-H, Elion. So now look at this. In the Epic of Creation, now you have a character that's called Alalu, which was imprisoned and buried on Mars in a tomb with his face carved out in it. That's why you see on some of these pictures of Mars, you'll see a face in the planet, because it was a real thing that went down there. That was a banished planet where they were in prison, but they had a station there because when they were mining gold from our planet to send to Nibiru, because they had a breach in the veil of their atmosphere. So what they were doing was taking gold particles and shooting them up in the atmosphere, to block the breach. So, but one of their mining stations was on Mars. That's why. Why you think you seeing all stuff called Ormus Real 24K Gold Oil? It says vitamins and minerals. I enjoy. This will create, vivid dreams, or allow you to tap into your visualization manifestation, because your visualization, this is where you get the as above, so below, as within, so without, inwards, eternal, inwards would be the subconscious, it's a mirror that, it manifests in that subconscious to it becomes conscious. You get what I'm saying? It's like a thought that you think of it, you conjure this thought, but then you ponder on it long enough, it becomes a physical reality, it turns into action. So it's a visualization manifestation, but it taps from you going within, but you still got to be conscious and aware. But if your pineal gland is calcified with all of these substance, somebody is taking going the extra mile to alter your natural God-given perception on this planet, to confuse you, separate you, keep you divided, just like these stories. Let us confuse them, let us destroy them, let us, jealous, this, that. Then you have other ones that's trying to save you. It's the dual force of nature here. So Egyptian, just like in it says just like in these texts, you will find out that Noah's name is also Zizudra in the Sumerian Eridu Genesis, Utnapishtim in the Babylonian Epic of Gilgamesh, and Atrahasis in the Atrahasis. Enoch's name would be Enmeduraki or Enmedurana. It says, was a king from the Sumerian city of Sippar, who appear as the seventh name on some versions of the Sumerian king list. Story: he was said to have been taken up to heaven by the gods Shamash and Adad, who taught him the secrets of the heaven and earth, including the arts of divination, such as inspecting a liver and pouring oil on water. So you see the similarities there? That's, if you read the book of Enoch, it'll tell you, which are the fallen angels and, what they did, what they taught, even down to teaching women the beautifying of the eyelids and seduction and seducing men by enhancing themselves, how to work metals and create weapons of war and all of these different things. It happened. It really happened. So, and I want to show y'all something. So as you see there, now, this is where it gets even deeper. As you see right there, it tells you these things. So now, when you get over here, when you read in Genesis 2 verse 10, now look what it says right here, clear as day, right here. A lot of people, why would this be right here when it's talking about Eden? It says, a river flowed from the land of Eden, watering the garden, and then dividing into 4 branches. The first branch, called Pishon, flowed around the entire land of Havilah. Now look at that. Havilah. Well, I translated it on this paper. Hold on. But Havilah, it says, the land of Havilah, where gold is found. Why is it saying that? It's clearly it's not wasting no time getting to where the gold is at, because this is what we came to this planet for. But the Bible is just giving you little bits and pieces. That's why you find all these other books scattered with the in-depth, more detail of what really actually happened here, like the Book of Giants, Book of Enoch. The secret books of Adam and Eve. But look, watch this. It says, a river flowed from the land of Eden, watering the garden, then divided into 4 branches. The first branch was called Pishon, and flowed around the entire land of Havilah, and Havilah in here would be on page 11. Hold on, let me show you something real quick. But yeah, you gotta know how to research these things. Havilah, which means circular. So it's basically talking about, it says Havilah would be the land circular where gold is found. The gold of that land is exceptional, pure, aromatic resin, and onyx stone. From the door, it's talking about gold and gemstones. All these things they tell you is wicked and bad. That's the first thing it's talking about in here, gold and gemstones. I wonder why. But yeah, when you start digging, you'll really start to see what's really going on here. Gold and gemstones, and also found there. The second branch, called Gilo, flowed around the entire land of Cush. We know what the land of Cush is. The third branch is called Tigris, flowed east of the land of Ashar, which means the land is straight. So you had circular and you had straight. So Tigris flowed east of the land of Ashar. The fourth branch is called the Euphrates. So you'll see this river, Euphrates River, in every single text. So you know this was an actual real geographical land. Now, this is where I want to get at right here. Now, Genesis 3 and verse 4. Alright. And it says right here, the serpent was in the strewest of the wild animals the Lord God had made. One day he asked the woman, did God really say you must not eat the fruit from any of the trees in the garden? Of course, we may eat from the trees in the garden, the woman replied. It's only the fruit from the tree of the middle of the garden, and we are not allowed to eat. God said you must not eat it, even touch it. If you do, you will die. Now, this is what the serpent says. It says, you won't die. The serpent replied to the woman, God knows that your eyes will be open as soon as you eat it, and you will be like God. But then in the beginning, they said, let us make them in our image to be like us. Now watch this. Let me show you something trippy here. Nobody never questioned this. It said, God said, you will be like God, knowing both good and evil. It's kind of a good thing. The woman was convinced. She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. The wisdom. Now, remember what I told y'all. Which God was God of wisdom? Which God, was of creation and of the earth? And which one had specific duties? So the wisdom that it would give her, she took some of the fruit and ate it, and she gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it too. And at that moment, their eyes was open. So obviously, the serpent didn't lie to her. She said she wanted the wisdom of this tree, and suddenly they felt shame and nakedness, so they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. And then it tells you how they heard God walking through the garden, but in the other text it said that it was in Lil. And he's like, what's going on here? But now look at this. Now you jump over here to verse chapter 3, verse 22. And the Lord said, God, look, the human beings have become like us. But hold up, let's jump back here, over here to verse 1. Chapter 1 and verse 26. Then God said, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. So he wanted them to be like us. Somebody tried to intervene and said, oh, hell no, we don't want them to be like us. So it's another entity that intervenes here. Wonder why. But he said, they will reign over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and the livestock and the wild animals of the earth and the small animals of the scurrying along the ground. So right here it says, the serpent replied to the woman, God knows that your eyes will be open soon as you eat it, and you will be like God, knowing both good and evil. The woman was convinced, and she saw that the tree was beautiful and the fruit was delicious, and she wanted the wisdom that it would have to give her. Now look at this. Who is the God of wisdom? It says right here. It says, Enki, the wise one, trickster and benefactor, Lord of earth, fresh waters, Absu, role, creation, magic, wisdom, problem solver, personality, clever, compassionate, strategic, domain, water, fertility, knowledge, sorcery, and technology. But you see that now let me show you something. Remember I told you that these entities, they became in every culture, right? So now look here. Right here. If you go into the South American countries, I showed you how Noah's name was what it was, Enoch's name was what it was, and these different cultures. So you ever heard of the Mayan god Kukulkan? It says the feathered serpent god of Mayan mythology. Kukulkan is one of the most powerful and I wrote this all together. It says influential deities in ancient beliefs, representing wisdom, wind, water, and water again, life itself. This feathered serpent bridges the earthly and divine. In the Aztecs, this same god is known as Quetzalcoatl, the bringer of knowledge and civilization. Well, you see pyramids in Egypt. You see ziggurats in Babylonian or Samaria in those times. South America, you see the same pyramids and ziggurats. Then you see, this is how you know where Atlantis is. You ever heard of the Bermuda Triangle, where all the planes go missing, boats go missing, because it has a geomagnetic pull so strong, because it's something right under the water right there. But it tells you about the time of a flood, that certain things was being destroyed and then certain people wanted it was different. It's the duality. You know what they say duality is? They said nothing is different. Everything is the same. What it tells you in the 7 Hermetic Principles, the law of mentalism, cause and effect, duality, which is polarity. It says everything is the same, just different in degrees. You get what I'm saying? So in gender, male and female, the same human being, but it's different in degrees. So sex organs, light and darkness, changing of day, just difference in a degree, down the degrees of something. So you have these traits of these two entities in the different degrees. You get what I'm saying? So, but back over here in chapter 3 in Genesis, it said, "Then the Lord said, let's look. The human beings have become like us, knowing both good and evil. What if they reach out, take fruit from the tree of life and eat it? They will live forever." And so the Lord God banished them from the garden. So obviously they didn't want them to live it. So now telling you, somebody banished them. One of the gods banished them from the garden, because guess what? They were figuring some things out. Their productivity was accelerating at a rate they might not have been right for, but it was there. They had that free will and that option, so it had to be stopped. When you go more into that this story, it tells you about even when one of them was taken up there to Nibiru, and they were decreed not to eat the bread and the water up there because it would have gave them immortality. And they, how I say when it came to the daughters of men, but some of those were sanctioned, believe it or not. This is a story they won't tell you. Some of them weren't sanctioned. But the one story I got is that the ones that were stationed on Mars, they had a station on Mars that was sending the gold back to Nibiru. They, I believe Marduk, they said he ended up getting sanctioned because I guess something had happened in the upper realms, but he was sanctioned to marry an actual human, so they had conceived children, so God, they was multiple gods, because this was an ongoing thing. We were created from gods, and then you had actual gods on, so you had, we were, instead of just being 50-50, some of us were, 75-25, you get what I'm saying? Because now we was integrating with the other gods, we was already 50-50, but 75-25, that's a higher rate, because now you got a God that's intermingling with, half God, half human, but human, Hueman, human means God, man. You get what I'm saying? Oh, it gets so deep, man. But what I'm saying is, that's what happened. This is where the 200 fallen ones came from, the rebel, because their leader, I think his name was Marduk, he was sanctioned. He was able to marry the one. So they said, well, if he could do it, why not us all? But this was his army. So being that he became a rebel outcast from up there, but he said, like, all right, I'm bow out gracefully. I'm going to go where I'm going. I got such and such. That's what I'm going to marry. He was sanctioned to do that, but the other ones weren't. So, but once they seen him do it, they said, oh, well, we want to go and going to the daughters of men too. You know, we want to have these too. And then that's when they all came down, and that's when they all start intermingling. You know, and they're intermingling the way that they can conceive. Some of them was sexual organs, but all they had to do was kiss you and look at you or whatever. They can get you pregnant like that. You know. Like, have you ever heard of parthenogenesis, when a woman can conceive without actually laying with a man? It's something that a snake can do. A serpent, you know, actually reproduce without actually having sexual relations with a companion, put it that way.